All right, this exercise is called interview channel costing. Now, why are we going to go do this? Well, we started in our last exercise to explore all of the possible channels that you could identify to go and reach out to customers for interviews. Now we're going to identify the fastest way to talk to those customers, the fastest way to find your early adopters. So we're going to continue our process of narrowing down from a huge set of potential options, the over 50 channels. We already sort of narrowed that down into a set of 10-ish or so. And then we're going to really pick ones so that you can have full confidence in your next step forward being the most efficient step that you can take. So just to recap, here's where we were. We had, 50 plus odd places to go talk to customers. You circled the ones that you thought you would be capable of doing, that you liked the best. And this is going to continue repeat this pattern of broadening our attention so that we can refocus it in the right spot. And this is from the design thinking world, design world. And again, we're going to go from that 50 group down to 10-ish, down to 1. Just a heads up, this graphic we need to replace with our own version of that. Okay, continuing on, there's actually 3 more reasons why this exercise is so powerful. The third is that we want to set your expectations about what it's going to take to get these interviews. So we think of interviews like, oh, this is a conversation will take maybe half an hour, but there's actually a lot of time that goes into preparing for that half an hour or an hour. You have to request an interview from someone. They have to get back to you, and then you have to schedule the interview, and then eventually you actually have to conduct the interview. So there's actually a fair amount of waiting involved in actually executing on an interview, and you're mostly dependent on the person that you want to interview getting back to you in a timely manner. So I want to set expectations about how long this process is going to take and how many people you're going to have to reach out to, because it turns out your response rate isn't going to be 100%. In fact, it'll be much lower than that. So I'm going to argue that to have 5 conversations, you're going to need to request probably about 30 interviews. So we'll see how that falls out here shortly. I also want to make sure you've got a backup plan. So we're going to go out and we're going to try and talk to these customers, but these are all based off of just wild assumptions that we're making inside the building. So I want you to be prepared so that if it turns out that you're not able to get interviews from your first channel, that you've got a backup plan. You know exactly where to fall to next so that you can go reach out to people in that channel. And if that fails, you'll have another backup plan. So we're actually going to prioritize all of your channels that you've got so that you understand which ones are going to be the most efficient so you can target those first, but then you'll also be able to fall back on other channels if it turns out that you can't even get interviews from your first channel. Also, if the interviews are returning results that you didn't expect and you want to continue down this path, this will give you another reason to have a backup. All right. The 5th reason this is important is that it's going to eliminate any excuses you have about getting out of the building. And I say that because this is going to be an intimidating step to go out and talk to strangers. But throughout this entire process, you've been in complete control. You've come up with all the potential channels. You selected the ones that you felt most comfortable executing in. And now you're going to prioritize them based on your own feeling towards them in terms of how long it's going to take you to execute on them. So you are going to be fully confident by the time you're done that these channels are the best channels for you to go and talk to customers. So that's going to eliminate any excuses to stay inside the building, and it's going to help propel you to go get out of the building with a plan that you feel really confident about. All right, that said, let's dive into it. So here I have my interview channel costing worksheet, and I've just tossed in my early adopter description and my hypothesized problem. So go ahead and pull those in. Those will come from your early innovation adoption curve sheet and your scale. That's where we're going to pull these from. All right, and then you're going to list down the channels that you circled during the 50 ways to talk to 5 people exercise. So I'm just going to throw down the channels I have here. You may notice that some of these channels are slightly different than the ones I selected in my previous exercise. That's because I wanted to call out some specific channels here and make sure that they got included. All right, so your channels are listed. Next up, you're going to start filling in these columns here. And this first column, or these first set of 3 columns, are actually all related. And what I want you to do is I want you to fill in for each of these cells here the number of days to, and then you're going to fill in the blank here with whatever's in this cell here, whatever's in this title here. So this reads days to request 30 interviews. That's going to go in this box here. All right, we'll get to the rest later. So what I want you to do is write down how many days is it going to take you to request 30 interviews from Product Hunt Fitbit owners. All right, or at least that's my example. So to me, how long is it going to take for me to request 30 interviews? Well, first let me talk about why 30. So 30 is what I've seen is a response rate of around 50% is strong. A response rate around 25% to requests for interviews is okay. It's not great, but around a third, right? That means that we're doing pretty well. So that's what we want to aim for here. So what I'm going to say is you're going to request 30 interviews, hoping that about a third of them will actually get back to you and be open to scheduling an interview. All right, and then eventually we'll see that out of those 10 that you schedule, you might have 5 people just totally flake and not actually do it, or maybe some people are available sometime later down the road, as in like their schedule's really busy now, but they have to schedule you way out. So we want to try and get 5 interviews done really quickly. So we're gonna try and schedule 10 so that we can get 5 done really, really quickly. All right. That explanation that I just gave should probably go with per column, not right now. So right now we should just include the request 30 header in the description of why we're requesting 30, and then move on to the scheduling stuff later. That should go later. Okay, so request 30. How many days to request your 30 interviews? Well, for Product Hunt Fitbit owners, I'm going to say it's going to take me 2 days. 2 days to crawl through Product Hunt comments, looking for people who mentioned Fitbit. Because again, I'm looking for people who already own a Fitbit and are still on Product Hunt looking for fitness-related apps. So I'm saying it's going to take me about 2 days to go do that. All right, how about people who are still struggling to meet their fitness goals? Yeah, that comes from up here in the problem, and on Fitbit's Facebook page. So they're expressing interest in Facebook, but they're saying, I am having trouble meeting my fitness goals. That's probably only going to take me a day, because Product Hunt, I've got to go and find all the people, and they don't have a way for me to contact them directly, so I have to go find them on Twitter, and then I have to send them a tweet, and they're also, the history of Product Hunt isn't quite as long, I assume, as the Fitbit's Facebook page will be. So anyway, I think it's going to be a little faster. It'll probably only take me a day to reach out to 30 people there. People on Reddit, I'm going to say it's a day and a half. Now, Fitbit users at the jogging track. This is an interesting one where imagine I go down to the jogging track and I just look for people who are wearing a Fitbit. So I'd say it'll probably take me about 2 days of like hanging out on the track, looking for people who are running around wearing a Fitbit to go request my 30 interviews. Personal trainers on Yelp. This one I think it's going to take less time because they're on Yelp. Their phone number's there. I can just cold call them. Couple other different areas here, Twitter, the user voice community, competitors' Facebook page. These are all sort of make sense. Now this one here, hosting a fitness accountability meetup. This is where I host my own meetup and try and bring people here who I think are, maybe own Fitbit and are still struggling to meet their fitness goals. I can host my own meetup and have people come to me. That one's going to take a little while because I'm going to have to convince 15 people to show up to a new meetup, 30 people to show up to my new meetup. And so that's going to take just a little bit of planning and preparation to figure out, how do I put together this meetup. But anyway, it could be fun. But it's going to take a little while before I actually get those people in front of me so that I can ask them to do an interview. And then finally, Googling Fitbit and Still Fat. This was just like a random channel that I thought about, and I really have no idea how long it would take to turn that Google search into 30 requests for interviews. So I'm just going to throw out a number that feels right, 8. All right, now we're going to move on to the scheduling 10. So this is how many days to schedule 10 interviews after you've actually made the request. So how long is it going to take for people to get back to you and for you to get back to them and settle on a time, yada, yada, yada. All right, so again, this is where we insert the description about 10. Why we're doing 10? Well, because 10 is... We're only shooting for 5, but we want to try and schedule 10 because we're trying to account for people who are going to flake and account for people whose schedules are so busy that they might have to push us off. So we're hoping that at least 5 of them we can get to now, even if we have to push 5 off to later down the road. All right, so how long to schedule 10 interviews for Product Hunt Fitbit owners? I'm going to say it's about 3 days to go for them to write back to me, confirm with them, etc., to get 10 of those scheduled. All right, same thing for the Facebook page. Fitbit mentioners on Reddit. I'll call that about the same. Now, okay, so this is interesting. People at the jogging track. If I go down to the jogging track and I ask people for an interview, as soon as I've requested, if they agree, that means I've already scheduled the interview because I'm like having the interview with them right then. So it's going to take me 0 days to actually do that. Yeah. So these are sort of instant gratification interviews. Personal trainers, I'm going to say that's a little bit more just because these people might be busy. They're busy doing their jobs, and they may not have time for me. They may not be that interested in discussing. So I'm going to say it's going to take about 5 days to schedule those 10 interviews. Another 5 days for everyone else, and then the Google Fitbit for still fat. I have no idea, so I'm not counting on those being very quick to actually turn into interviews. All right, finally, how long will it take for me to actually conduct the 5 interviews? Now, this is basically an approximation for how far out have we had to schedule the interviews, right? So here we got them scheduled, but maybe the people are so busy that we can't get them for another 5 or 10 days. Yeah. So how long after we've actually scheduled them will it take me to complete these 5 interviews? Well, I'm going to say 3 days for most of these guys. Once I've got them on the books, I can probably try and get 5 of them done within 3 days. Again, at the jogging track or anywhere I'm going in person, the interviews will be conducted immediately. So there's 0 cost here if we go out in person. Personal trainers on Yelp. These guys, again, I think they're going to be a little busy, so it's going to take me a little longer to go and interview them. 3 for most of these people, most everyone else. Okay, so now we've got basically how long it's going to take to actually conduct these interviews, and we have a sense of how many people we're going to have to reach out to go make that happen. So let's total up the number of days it's going to take to make this happen. So this is straightforward here. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to account for the relevancy of these interviews. And by relevancy, what we're trying to capture is whether or not these people in these channel have this problem up here. Now, why wouldn't they? Well, if you recall in the previous step where we said come up with 50 ways to talk to 5 people, we said there are no bad ideas. We want you to throw down any idea that comes into mind, right? Well, during that process, we might have actually included channels that don't actually relate to this problem right here. And so if that's the case, we want to do either one of 2 things. Either we want to just like scratch them off entirely and not focus on them at all, or we want to assess an additional cost that like, hey, going and talking to these people may not be the most effective use of our time because they are not very relevant to the problem that we think our early adopters have. Yeah, so we're just going to capture how well this channel sort of meets this criteria. And you're going to give one of 3 scores. So you give a 1, a 3, or a 5. You give it a 1 if it's highly relevant. Right? If there's great correlation between the channel and the problem, you're going to give the relevance score a 1. If it's related and kind of relevant, you're going to give it a 3. And if it's not very relevant, if the problem doesn't necessarily speak to this channel or vice versa, I want you to give it a 5. Okay, so you just have 3 options, 1, 3, or 5, based on how relevant you think they are. So let's go through ours. For Product Hunt Fitbit owners, this is obviously the customer segment. This is exactly who we described in our early adopters. We really think that they're going to have some problems here, so the answer is obvious. It's a 1. These are highly relevant, so we give it a 1. For people who are struggling on Fitbit's Facebook page, again, I'm going to be looking for people who are mentioning that they're struggling meeting their fitness goals. So that means that the problem is going to be very relevant. I'm going to target them explicitly. So I'm not targeting everyone on the Facebook page, just the people who are struggling, just the people who meet my problem criteria. So again, very relevant. Fitbit, Facebook, or Reddit Fitbit mentioners. I'm going to call this a 3. I'm going to look for people who are having problems meeting their criteria, but maybe I'm going to have struggle finding those people, enough of those people. So I'm just going to, my gut says it's probably about a 3. Now the joggers at the track, this one's interesting. I'm actually going to put a 5 here. And the reason why I'm putting a 5 is because yes, they own a Fitbit, but if they're at the jogging track, do I really think they're not meeting their fitness goals? Yeah, they might be. They might not be meeting their fitness goals. Um, so I still want to leave them on here. I still want to talk with them. But I'm going to put them as a 5 because something tells me if they're still at the track, it's working. The Fitbit is doing its job. So I'm going to represent this as a 5, as in not entirely relevant to my problem. All right, personal trainers on Yelp, same thing. It's a 5. I'm thinking about people not meeting their own fitness goals. I think the personal trainers are going to be meeting their fitness goals. I also think that that this may be helpful to their clients. So again, I'm not going to scratch this entirely, but I'm going to put it as a 5, not entirely relevant. All right, so we're going to keep going down here. Again, the hosting fitness accountability meetup. When I design the meetup, I get to say, come if you have a Fitbit and you're still not meeting your fitness goals. We'll hold each other accountable, etc. So I'm going to make sure that that's a 1. And then I have no idea what's going to come out of the Fitbit and Still Fat. But of course, because I'm in control of who I reach out to, I'm going to make sure that it's at least a 3 in terms of relevance. All right, so now we have our cost and we have our relevance. All we're going to do is multiply these numbers together to get a total channel cost. All right? So what I've got here sort of makes sense once you multiply all these out. And now we're simply going to pick the least expensive channel, right? So the channel that has the lowest number. And in this case, it is not Product Hunt Fitbit owners on Product Hunt, right? Which is what we would sort of assume based on this description. We actually think the channel that's going to bear the most fruit for us, or at least the quickest, is going to be the strugglers on Fitbit's Facebook page, right? I think you're going to be able to get to them and message them and set up interviews with them a little quicker than I will be on Product Hunt. All right, so that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to focus my energy. As soon as I get done doing this exercise, I'm going to, put together my interview script. I'm going to point right here is where I want to go. Yeah. Something else is cool, though, about this whole exercise. The first thing is that if it turns out that I go onto Fitbit's Facebook page and I can't find people struggling to meet their fitness goals, well, that doesn't mean I give up entirely. It means that, okay, well, this channel just isn't the right place for me to go interview these customers. I can go to my backup channel. My backup channel are Fitbit owners who are on Product Hunt. I know exactly where to go next. You know? The other thing that's cool about this is that some of these channels will take some time to actually develop, but other channels are almost instant in terms of their feedback. So what I can do in this case is I can send out my requests for interviews, right? And while I'm waiting for people to get back to me to schedule them in this time frame right here, I can actually work on a secondary channel. Yeah, I can actually go down to the jogging track and I can actually have my customer interviews there. Now I'm doing this third, I'm not doing this first because these interviews might not be entirely relevant, but I might as well go talk to these people while I'm waiting for these people to get back to me. Yeah? So through one of these 3 options, either the strugglers on Facebook, the Fitbit owners, or the people at the jogging track, I'm going to definitely knock out at least 15 interviews, right? And I want to make sure that I'm conducting not 5 across all 3 of these. It's got to be 5 in each one because each of these different groups is going to have a different set of problems. But I'm going to be set up to go and talk to people and really discover the problems that people are actively trying to solve. All right, so that's what we have. You've now done your interview channel costing. You are now armed with a plan A, a plan B, and then a plan C to do while you're doing plan B, or at least I am in my case, and you should be able to figure out where to put your energy as well. All right, so just to recap, why did we do this? We identified the fastest way for you to talk to your early adopters. That came out very clearly. We also narrowed from a huge set of options down to 1. Go and find people on Facebook to go interview. Yeah. We also set expectations about how many people you're going to have to reach out to and what the response rate is going to look like for your request for interviews, and set your expectations for about how long this is going to take. This isn't going to be instant. It's going to take us a little while to go and get these interviews done. We have a backup plan for you. So now we not only have one place to focus your energy, we also have a backup plan. We have a set of prioritized channels that you can walk through to go and talk to your customers. And we've eliminated all the excuses to go and talk to these people because you picked the channels and then you got to pick the ones that you wanted to go work with, and then we just prioritized them. So now you should have all the confidence and all the enthusiasm in the world to go out and talk to these people because they're in the places that you wanted to go look for them. All right, so congratulations, you have now done your interview channel costing. You found the most effective way to go and talk to your first set of customers. After this, we're going to go define our interview script, and then very shortly you will be getting out of the building.